Well, hello there, and I know I haven't posted a lot in this channel for a long time, and you're maybe asking now why the hell am I speaking in English? Well, the thing is that from now on I basically shifted my mind and I decided to do with this channel something different. Now I'm gonna focus more on stories, basically, storytelling to be more precise, and trying to take some new angles for it. I try to be more I would like to say pure, but that's not exactly the word. Maybe more sincere. As I thought about it, I don't want to have to have such protocol or such need to be on the best way for every story I tell, not think about it too much. Because for me, a story can be born in any place and any moment. Even the good ones or bad stories, even the worst of them, could be found in any place. Anyone can do a story and anyone can find a story or create a story. And the context of how it is made could be important, but it's not exactly right now like the most important thing. Maybe when people in the future analyze your work or something, they will go like, well, in this story period, he did this and that, and well, that could happen. Anyhow, I decided to use this channel to basically tell from start, just to start a bit better, to tell short stories. And from where I'm from, these stories are not exactly popular. Like, needless to say, I don't think my culture would actually like this too much, but maybe I'll do some videos later with the translation of this, but for this I just want to tell a short story and maybe you can give me some feedback on it later, as well. I'm always trying to improve my craft. That said, I will start with it now, and let's see how it goes. Shall we? This is a story I wrote, and it's a very short story. It's called Them Falling. Our story starts in a hole in the ground. I know, not exactly much to move your heart like castles under the moonlight or a battlefield over a shower of arrows with the background of a stormy sky. And it's not even that big of a hole in the ground either. Maybe big enough to let about 3 fingers together with this. Maybe two if you have thick fingers like some of us do. But the story takes place in this hole, which from the outside seems minuscule and irrelevant. But from the inside, in the smaller pieces of it, where even bugs that crawl cannot harm for it is being too small for their influence and forced to reach, and so close to the wall of it that gravity held it in place like the regular ground but in a much different angle. A small city with open but barricaded borders opened its eyes for a new day, which lasted longer the closer one was to the edge of the hole. This town had what towns are supposed to have people, of course, but not like our understanding of people in the most basic sense, but more like the very different version of the classic Homo sapiens we already know and love. They were a weird kind of natural entity to see, same shape as a common human, but with some solid spots in critical places to prevent their fragile and sensitive being to know a premature and unintended end. And in the remaining areas of their anatomy, they look like translucent sketches of the various ranges of the known light and shadow, in many colors and shapes. So wonderful to think, yet secret for the sight of bigger beings. The leading actors of this tale were a humanoid being, which we assume male in its complexion, young also as he was also still brighter, than those who came before in earlier generations of its species, with pieces of dust which, for this being, were like stones, carved from piles and piles of it. They built houses and a lifestyle of their own, feeding from herbs that clenched to the dust and from the rain that was condensated in such small portions at this scale. If we needed some nomenclature for this creature, I would like to name him Micetelus navernicus eldeteriel monteruscus secterelium belpeterten, but since memorizing that name, it's too difficult to me, we shall know him, this small fellow, as Mike. Easier to digest. Mike, in this hole, lived on what we could assume for the position of stars when looking at it, on the west side of the hole, and he was content with what he had. He had progenitors, he had others of his generation to share its time with, from his lineage and from others, interacting strangely, whimsically, in a somewhat melodious rhythm as they did their activities needed for their survival, and resting after their recreation time during the night. Mike knew his cycle in life. He would grow bigger and stronger, to then become weaker and vanish at some point, if he was lucky enough to not get killed by any hazardous incident or simply bad luck, which exists in all scales for those who think it can only be measured in one direction. Kinda foolish, but that's my opinion nonetheless. Mike, in between that time period, would find a partner, a special companion of the opposite spectrum of the species, to then maybe become a progenitor as well, and pass on what he discovered to it, and see the seed grow as he shared time with a certain being which would mean more to him than the whole universe. At least that was the dream he had, a rough sketch on its mind. But not all nights were peaceful. In the west side of the hole was basically an object outside the need for greed, for no more of what they could manage to get offered by their own labor. But those who lived in the east lived a more expensive idea of what surviving meant. Their domain expanded since their town to the opposite side rised. Above of them, from the view of those at the west, from their central point of expansion, to first take control till the very edge of the hole, as well as the nearest part to the bottom, which remained an unknown view, for it was too deep for the light of the day to unveil its mysteries. Then it started to move sideways, with violent tendencies and maybe poor hygiene. That last part I can't say for certain, but they were getting closer in both flanks to the town of the west. Those of the town of the east believed in principles like duty, obligation, destiny, and that sort of stuff to such a primitive level they could not help but just follow conquest wherever it might be possible. I know it sounds cliche in this context, sorry, but for those on that side, it was like the only survival mechanism they developed. It worked and they kept doing it, like if they became the instinct or the instinct became them. No idea how that played out precisely, but among those of the town of the east, the second lead actor of the tale was located, front line of them, charged with the left side to the town of the west, brutal and violent, a predator for survival and ferocious in tendencies to be feared by those who followed the hierarchy of strength of the platoon. There was what we can assume was a young female of the other side of the hall, which we might as well name Holganic Morgellania Bertentus Gorgendiac Frekfinkai Helburgunkel. But again, too many words and hard to remember. So we might just go with Holy instead. Casual name to remember, I think, for all of you hearing this delirious tale of people in a hole. So one of the fateful nights, where the soldiers of the east, following the idea of closely but surely moved to ambush the town, who was minding its own business, Holy grew impatient, wanting to taste savagery, victory, and maybe some bloodthirst for dessert. and she forced some of the platoon with her to scout the area, preparing a more effective ambush with the greatest of stealth and precision, which for one of the citizens and part of this particular military force meant crushing the wall and start to hit everything that moved like an animal in a panic. Needless to say, curiosity killed the cat, and Holly was a lot smaller than a cat, so now think what curiosity might do to her. The plan failed spectacularly, as these peaceful people were expecting to be target at some time for the ever-expanding pursuit of the violent conquerors growing more and more above their heads. The small group she used to infiltrate not so gracefully the town got outnumbered quickly, 10 to 1, with the guard of this land watching behind the wall expecting some ruthless tactic, and as expected, they got to taste battle against them. Very few went down on the defending side due to the savagery of their tactics and being more battle tested. But against this flood of enemies guarding their homes, the conclusion was little more than inevitable. So Holly, as well as many of the bravest leaders in the history of we, the big folk, did the most obvious tactic in this situation: running away. She bounced from darkened alley to even darkest allies of the town, until needing to reach for the top of the houses and jump with agility and quickness among them looking for a place to hide. And she followed like a moth to the flame the light of the distance of an open window, jumping through it, killing silently the one there and resting until reinforcements came was her plan. Flawless in her mind, but nothing further from the fate that was waiting for her that fateful night. After jumping through that window, rolling professionally in the ground and lifting a weapon to the only other occupant of the room, she found a sensation she never knew before. Surprise to an unexpected level, like the crumbling of a perception of the world was redrawn in her mind, as she pointed her sharp weapon to the translucent neck of Mike, who was about to go to sleep. This strange creature felt no fear of her killing instrument. In fact, looked at it quizzically, like a farm boy finding a new toy to play with, and strangely enough, her taunts and menaces meant nothing as this particular individual looked at the instrument and her with weird interest. When she menaced to slay his life, he asked for her to be a menace more quietly, so his little brother wouldn't wake up, and ask about the reason why does she needed the attitude of killing. A question she never met before. The simpler the life, the harder the questions hit us, some say, but now Mike was only more curious about the uninvited guest. After salutations were met in an uncomfortable manner by the killing machine, a weird and quite unexpected chat, as they heard in the background how the platoon of fools who followed Holly in her impatience were kicked out of town, for those here would not kill, but harm. Beaten up, the soldiers went alone, not thinking about their leader, who just ran away at that moment. That's what she saw from the distance. But before thinking about her next move, got flooded by questions about the world beyond the barricade, of the town and the lands she saw. And even though many anecdotes included a bloodbath and strangely Holly felt embarrassed saying all those things out loud, the expression and air around Mike only showed more curiosity and interest in those tales. They chatted in strangely equal terms for a conversation in which Mike felt a deadly object pointed at him the whole time, and when the new day began, he asked Holly to stay there and be quiet. He wanted to talk more, to know more, and with a weird and peaceful expression, went to do his chores before coming straight back to his room to chat more, hoping she didn't escape. Fortunately for Mike, that afternoon Holly showed why she had no reason to escape and deep down felt sorry for those who got sent back to the platoon, getting closer from both sides as time passed. Emotions which, by definition, she would have never shared with those under her due to the nature of their culture. And from her mind, we went to both of them, watching from a window and hearing from the central side of the east town the scream of those very same soldiers as they got slinged into oblivion with a gigantic contraption made for execution. Let's elaborate a little more on that element known as the slinger. Some of the few smart folk in the east side discovered that at a certain vertical distance from the wall of the hole, their floor, the force of attraction of an object was not strong enough to bring it back. So they got sent into the depths of an unescapable and unmeasurable, by actual standards, fall deep into the dark, mysterious side of the hole. Treason or retreat in the east side was met with that fate. A fate that, if Holly was found, she would soon meet among the companions that she guided in that dreadful night. And to make the moment even stranger, even with the murder instrument at her reach, might just hold her hand with a weird warmth she never felt. And the weirdest part is that it started to glow as their both translucent anatomies touched each other in that split second of confusing emotion for both of them. A spark of the mixed color that light showed when passing through them sparkled together, stronger. This would have been such a sweet moment to have a chat about if it wasn't cause, in the panic, Holly pinned Mike against the wall, asking desperately for questions about to stab him in fear. Fortunately, her anger quenched quick, as the knowledge of the ignorance of Mike showed, strange to say the least, as her anger was never calmed down so quick before. Why would this clumsy creature have such an ability to affect her anger in such a manner? She tried to figure out. And as she did, Mike asked for her if she wanted to stay hidden, coexisting with him until she could go back home if she wanted, in a way for which no one could be able to remember, to sling her into the void. Having no other plans, Holly agreed for this idea, and their daily lives started quite roughly, step by step. Hard to understand and live by their side until they would be apart, as agreed. From Mike's sleeping problems, knowing what she did to other more trained and stronger creatures, to Holly's incapability to be more sincere with her emotions and sometimes become unpredictable. And add to that the fact that of the secret among them and the trust they were forced to have for each other, adding also moments when they almost get caught by the progenitors and the other entities of similar lifespan to Ike, and needed to be creative with hiding spots. Quite an unexpected turn of events for them. But time passed, the platoons moving slower after the episode with Holly, as they could deduct, being more cautious of their enemies' numbers and strength. And during this period of time, insults and aggression were lowering from one side of the room, and from the other, more awareness and consciousness grew. Path of a road they never traveled because they lacked the shoes for them were opening. Slowly but surely, in that room, where sounds and tales were being asked and answered, where expressions were always to be shared with increasing sincerity, the road they walked, the adventure moving as they seated down, collided in a crossroad, where both found themselves in strange territory, the same for both, but nevertheless strange in their view, like traveling in an instant to the other side of the world and forgetting your own culture, not understanding how even gravity would work or the cardinal points to move from there. A sudden halt in a view of a world unexplored. But as their gazes crossed strangely, they felt in their right path, like there was a hidden compass for them only in this place. And I must say, this sparkle incident, almost by instinct and hope born from time and blooming as the most rare and beautiful herb Mike could have ever collected, and exciting of possibility as the greatest victory Hooley could have ever known, happened again that afternoon as the articulations in their hands crossed, and the warmth came again, but stronger, and they just let it grow for a long time until night came enjoying the feeling, as if time could not move under that light. Sparkling events would repeat over and over again, Holly being more inconsiderate towards her praise weapon to glitter more with Mike. And well, it was an adventurous and magical sense of existing, the one they both started to feel in this place. A small place which belonged to one and only, but now it was impossible to see it without the other filling that space where late night talks could be exchanged, holding one another in soft glowing sensation until a new day came, and they would then beg for time to move faster to see each other once again. One would hope their concern with time would also be about the platoons growing near with each day to the borders of the town of the West, ready to pummel it and completing their circle of violence. When the always reaching invasion came, life in both sides got spent in a brutal carnage for such a small microcosmos. Mike wanted to find a way to escape with Holly and avoid this. They didn't hate like them. They didn't need to be in that. But Holly knew that would most likely fail, with her almost blunt weapon for the lack of use. She managed to stuck Mike to the wall before giving him what we might understand as a goodbye sparkle, resembling a loving kiss for us the big folk. And she gave herself away, rich like the wind, the one in command of the crushing of the town, to be more precise, and declared herself a traitor, and mocked them. She gave herself in exchange of giving the town more time, as she was being sent and prepared to be slain under the charge of treason. Mike, on his side, after managing to free himself, kept holding to Holly's instrument, and felt a pain bigger than the one any modern weapon could deal, as he felt the distance between them growing and being barricaded in a closed road no one of them could ever travel back again. Despair, desolation. The light was burning dimmer for him. The flavor of the air was different. His small room felt immense now, and he looked like a sick creature not letting go of the war instrument, like if leaving it would also mean leaving himself away, or at least a giant chunk of him. He eventually knew that within the next 2 months, because of Holly's actions, they would be at peace, as she was going to be slung into the void darkness for that time. After gripped by those news, his mind re examined the whole deal, the time, the memories, the sparkles, and did what could be the most dumbest thing a creature so small would dare to do. As the others were working on crafting defenses for the approach of the army of the East, he secretly stole materials and started to work in something outside the main area where everyone lived, and piece by piece crafted, abandoning his chores, making excuses, faking everything until he managed to work hard enough. He made a miracle for him. Mike managed to look closely, to calculate, to think and foresee the way the execution of Holly would go. and knowing the conflict meant nothing for him, that he was void in the dark already without that he found but never knew it needed. He took the decision of not letting the plan go as planned. This creature didn't know how else to act or be. The fateful deadline came. All the strong males of the town of the west on the borders were ready for a stampede after the execution would be finished. And among the crowd Mike was nowhere to be found. Time moved at a slower pace that day. The tension in the air made the sun look like it stopped for some seconds to see where everything was going. And from the east side of the hall the screams were heard, the wind blowing with whispers of sadness as Holly got slinked far away from her birthplace. And from a different angle, but at the same time, another set of screams filled the air. Mike used his miracle, cutting a counterweight with Holly's instrument, which shot him into the air far away with his own take in the slinger, with the right angle to intercept Holly's, in which were her last moments. The moment got strangely long in this unexpected situation, as they both shared the glow, started and shared that glow in the center of the hall, sparkling stronger than ever before, knowing from one another how much they wanted to see each other again, and how that very moment, which could have little consequences, had only one purpose in their view: the moment of a reunion into a new adventure, far away from that unfilled room into a path only for them. And grabbing one another with all their might, they fell deep, illuminating with their sparkles the dark that existed far beyond the lower limit of the domain of the East Town. Flashing views of unexpected things were found as they both went down together, like a shooting star in a cave, with a trajectory difficult to contemplate for many. Even I don't know where the tale of Holly and Mike ended. Did they both plummeted to their demise in a Romeo and Juliet style? Did their trajectory change and they are now living away from the conflict in the mystery lands covered in shadow? Maybe they never stopped falling with each other. I don't know. What I know is that inside of this, of seeing them falling, the glowing reached some among both sides of this battle with no clear motive. As they saw them falling, their fight instruments went falling as well. Their hate went falling in dark doubt again. Their numbers of fighters went falling as well, without a need for it, and many things crumbled by this selfish act of two beings who just wanted to sparkle together once more, even if it was the last one of those events. As the title suggested, them falling, and how they fell. How this could end is up to you, because I don't know where the end of that hole led to. And with that in conception, may I ask you, care to take a guess?